All right, let me see. There we go. Now we got the juice. Good morning. It's good to see y'all this morning. It's good to see everybody on this nice, cool morning that we have in South Georgia in the month of, technically, I think we're still in August. But we're knocking on the door. It's hard to believe August is already over with, ain't it? Just think about it. If we can get through September, I think we're good with the hurricanes, y'all. You thought about that this morning too? Now, if something happens in a week, y'all, it is not my fault. We've been hammered. That's exactly right. Maybe the Lord's going to give us a year off. I got some trees that really need to grow another year before. Well, it's good to see everybody. Before we get into our study, I just want to ask everybody, if you will, to please pray with me. Heavenly Father, Lord, we are grateful for another day, Lord, just all the many things that you give us, that you bless us with, and all the things that you do for us, Lord. And we're just mindful and grateful that we have the opportunity to come together as a body to study your word, Lord, to glean things from your word that we can apply to our lives, Lord. The things that we studied today, Lord, we ask, Lord, that we can maybe even let some of the things that we talk about be something that could motivate us to have a deeper study on our own time when we're at our house, Lord, and by ourselves. We understand, Lord, that the greatest relationship that we have is with you, and we just ask you, Lord, just to help us to be motivated to every day deepen that relationship. Thank you for your Son and what we have through him in his name. Amen. All right, so this week we're going to finish up Lesson 10, and then we'll move into Lesson 11. And hopefully we might be able to, my goal is to finish today. Next Sunday, what we'll be doing is we're going to do an overall recap of Numbers. So kind of what we did with Leviticus, I want you to take this week and I want you to think about what are some lessons that have really just stood out to you, okay? What are some things through the whole book of Numbers, things we've covered, maybe things that you've looked at in your own study? And what are some things that have really stood out to you? So next week will be what I've learned from the book of Numbers. And then we'll hand out next week our material on Deuteronomy. All right? So that's what we're going to do next week. So we're going to try to get through this today. So we stopped last week in Numbers chapter 32. And it's in Numbers 32 where we see the division of the land that's east of the Jordan, okay? We haven't went into the promised land yet, but there's going to be a division of land there. The land east of the Jordan had been captured. Sihon, the king of the Amorites, Og, the king of Bashan, and the Midianites had been destroyed. The land was without inhabitants. The children of Gad, Reuben, and half the tribe of Manasseh requested that Moses divide that land among them, since it especially was suited for cattle, as their possession of the land of Canaan. Moses was angry at their request. He saw the request as an assault on the unity of the nation. He asked, "Shall your brethren go to war, and shall you sit here?" This would discourage the rest of the nation and may prevent their capturing the land. Moses compared this request to the unbelief which occurred at Kadesh Barnea. One thing that was said about this, the tribes of Reuben and Gad took a step toward possessing the land by asking Moses for permission to settle this area that had already been conquered. It was good land for raising cattle, sheep, and they had large herds and flocks. Now, Moses was angry. Now, can we empathize with the fact that Moses was angry initially at this request? What stands out to him? What is it about this request that would maybe make us maybe take a second look, or like, why would you be doing this? You know, what was it about this request that initially would make somebody like Moses angry? They're taking the easy road, right? They're taking the easy road. I mean, they as a collective unit cleared this land out, right? And now we have Gad, and we got Reuben, and we got half of Manasseh that's saying, "Hey, we want this," right? We want this area, okay? We want this. We want to set up shop, so to speak, in this area. And Moses looks at it like, well, wait a minute. So you want this, and we give you this, and then everybody else has got to go across that river, right? And they got to do what? You got to drive out the rest of them, right? We got to fight. And y'all going to sit here and watch that? Which would have been very easy to do, right? Because, hey, you've got your land. What's the incentive to continue to fight, right? It would have been very easy just to say, you know what, we got ours, we're good, thank you. Y'all go get y'all's. All right? And so with that, what would the answer be? What's going to happen to really cool Moses down, so to speak? The men from the 2½ tribes told Moses that they would go with their brethren across the Jordan to capture the land. First, they would build places for their cattle and put their children in some of the fenced cities which had been captured for safekeeping. And then they would join them in battle to capture Canaan. Now, that sounds reasonable, right? Okay, let's get our herds settled. Let us get our children protected and taken care of. And then we'll join you and we will fight to get, to finish this out. To get everybody else what belongs, what's theirs. Moses was satisfied with this. If these 2½ tribes would help their brethren capture the rest of the land, then the land east of the Jordan would be divided among them. If they refused, the Lord threatened, in Numbers 32:23, be sure your sin will find you out. Now, how serious would you take that threat? What have we seen so far where the people in these, where the tribe of Gad and Reuben and half of Manasseh, when this is communicated to them, you think about the things that they've seen, correct? The things that they've seen the Lord do. And they know that He is a God of His Word, correct? And so if you back out of this, and y'all, people, can they back out of their word? I'm sure we've all experienced that one, right? But God says if you do that, there will be a consequence. And I'm sure from everything that they saw, they didn't want any part of that consequence, right? So the 2½ tribes secured the land east of the Jordan, made sheepfolds for their cattle, and placed their families in the fenced cities. Moses divided the land east of the Jordan among them. And so we see this division of the land east of the Jordan here. We see in chapter 33, contains a list of the encampments which Israel made during the 40 years of wilderness wanderings. The listing of many cities not previously mentioned in Exodus or Numbers reminds us that our history to this period is extremely brief. In other words, we're only given a snapshot of everything that happened over that 40 years. And y'all, you think about it, 40 years is a very long time, correct? It's a very long time. There's a lot of things that happen. I mean, what is mentioned about, Jesus' ministry lasted roughly how long? His ministry, 3 years. His ministry lasted 3 years. And we, at the very end of John's gospel, what does John write about the things that Jesus did? That's right. That's it. And so did John or Matthew or Mark or Luke, did they record everything that Jesus did? No. Matter of fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that John writes, he says that this, that he didn't suppose that any of the books could hold all the things that he did. That's right. That's exactly right. That's right. That's exactly right. And so with that, we don't have everything, but we got everything that we need, right? So at the very end of Numbers 33, there's a command given. There's a very important command given starting in verse 50. And what's said here, now the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you have crossed the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, destroy all their engraved stones, destroy all their molten images, and demolish all their high places. You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it. And I have given you the land to possess. And you shall divide the land by lot as an inheritance among your families. To the larger you shall give a larger inheritance, and to the smaller you shall give a smaller inheritance. There everyone's inheritance shall be whatever falls to him by lot. You shall inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain shall be irritants in your eyes and thorns in your sides. And they shall harass you in the land where you dwell. Moreover, it shall be that I will do to you as I thought to do to them. Now, with that we see there's a command here to do what? What are they commanded to do? They're commanded to drive out what? Everybody. Everybody. And matter of fact, not only that, but God at the very end of that, God says, if you don't do this, right, what might happen? I might do to you what I'll intend to do to who? To them. And so with that, is God giving them an option, so to speak? Well, He is giving them a choice to make, but you better make the right one, right? This is their inheritance, okay? This is their inheritance. Our material says, the God who owns all the earth has the right to evict inhabitants. It's His, correct? It's His right. This He chose to do because of the ungodliness of the Amorites. He commanded Israel to drive the Canaanites out of the land and destroy every vestige of their culture and idolatrous religion. Then they could divide the land among themselves for an inheritance. If Israel failed to do what God commanded, those who continued to live in the land would vex them, rising up to attack and conquer them. We'll see that in the book of Judges. If Israel adopted their wicked ways, God would drive them from the land of Canaan. Now, God says get rid of these inhabitants, because when you get rid of these inhabitants, you get rid of the culture. You get rid of all the things, the idolatry, the things that could lead to them leaving God, right? Those strong influences. And so with it, this is the command given to them. This is what they're supposed to do. Now, is what God is asking them to do, is it unreasonable? No. Matter of fact, they should be very thankful, because He has already, 40 years earlier, brought them to the doorstep, correct? And was He ready to give it to them then? Of course He was. And so it's their own fault, right, that they've had to go 40 years wandering for a generation to die out, so to speak, because of their literal lack of faith. And now here they are once again at the doorstep, right? And now it's up to them. Here it is. I'm ready to give it to you. I'm ready to bless you. I'm ready. In other words, God's saying, I'm ready to keep my word, right? Here it is. Now you just got to go in and take it. I'm going to be with you. I will bless you. I will protect you. I will help you get through it. But that's all God can do, is let them know that. They got to believe Him. They've got to trust Him. And they got to be willing to go take that step, right? Now, obviously initially right here, there's going to be a difference, especially when we get into Joshua. You're going to see a difference in attitude. There is the belief, right, that they can do this. Now, we'll find out really quickly that as they start to commingle instead of drive out, there comes an issue, right? Influence, y'all, is an extremely powerful thing. There's working on education and everything. You see the power of influence. When we let our kids get into relationships with people that maybe are not of like mind, right? I know there was a guy that told me, he says, I got a rule, and I tell my kids, this is my rule with my kids. Some people like it, some people don't. He says, but this is my rule. You got 3 months. I said, what's the 3-month rule? He says, I told my daughter, she's dating a guy, she's got 3 months to convert him, or it's over with. Dad dissolves the relationship. And I said, how did that go? He said, she was very motivated to study God's Word. He said, but that's me. I have to protect my kid. And the greatest influence that my kid can have, particularly is the close friendships and the person that they are in a relationship with. That's the closest, that's the heaviest influences to my kid's life. And so maybe I'm extreme. He said, but you're going to live in my house, that's my rule. He says, as a father, I will know how serious this kid is. If he won't pray with her, red flag. If he won't come worship with her, red flag. And I'm not going to have that in my daughter's life. He says, now, she might be very upset with me for a long time. He says, but I got to do what I got to do. I got to protect her as much as I possibly can while I can do it. Now, could be wrong, could be right. I got a little one that won't be dating anybody till she's 18. She's not allowed to marry until she's at least 25, and she's out of school. We'll see how that works, right? All right, let's move on to lesson 11. All right, so in Numbers 34, verses 1 through 19, we see that the boundaries of the Promised Land are gone through. They're established. I'm not going to read through all of that. You can go back and look at that and read that if you would like this week. In chapter 34, in verses 16 through 29, we see that there are men appointed to divide this land. The Lord appointed the high priest Eleazar and Joshua to take the lead in dividing the land. A prince from each tribe was chosen to assist in dividing the inheritance. The tribes and their representatives were as follows, and it goes on to name those. What I find interesting is the Lord appointed 2 guys, right, to take the lead. Why are these 2 guys chosen? Why is Eleazar and Joshua chosen? Boom, there you go. Eleazar is going to, he's the high priest, and Joshua is going to be the guy that's going to take Moses' place, correct? And so it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Go ahead. That's what I would have done. That's what I'd have done, the stick version of that. The best way I've heard it explained, and I can go in, I can look again just to get a better explanation, but it was they would cast lots, so it was some kind of a stone of some kind of a tangible object, and each one of them had value of some kind of like, in a sense, today we have dice that we use, right? It's something to that degree from what's been explained to me, but I can definitely get a better idea. I can get a better answer for next week on the specifics of what this would be in the system. There was also casting lots, yes, yeah, absolutely. I'll be more than happy to. When we look at these people that are selected as the quote-unquote the prince from each tribe, there's one, when I'm looking at this, there's one that stands out to me. Anybody want to take a guess who that is? Caleb does to me. Now, and then this is why. There's only 2 guys who had enough faith at the very beginning, right, to say, we can go and take this. Let's go right now and get it. And we know that was Joshua. Joshua's going to take over for Moses, but who's the other guy? Caleb, right? And here he is, y'all. Here's a guy that I'm not sure how old he would have been the first time around, but now we've had, we're at 40 years later, so he's got to be an older guy by now, correct? He's got to be, he doesn't have that youthful, what's that word? Exuberance, okay? As I found out yesterday, I was picking up some real big heavy bricks yesterday. I no longer have that youthful exuberance. But he doesn't have that, but yet, when I see his name here, this tells me that the people, those in the tribe of Judah, did they have a lot of respect for this guy? Oh, yeah. Because you got to believe when these guys are chosen, the prince from each tribe, this is essentially a person that we all trust, right? Everybody in Judah, we trust this guy to speak for us, right? To be our representative. It's no different than anything else that we see. It's no different than any election or anything else. We throw our support behind somebody that we trust, that we agree with, that we think is going to do the best job for us. And this also speaks to me when I look at this of Caleb, of his desire to be that guy so many years later. Do you think, and this is what I thought about when I'm looking at this, do you think it still bothered Caleb that he had to wander 40 years? Do you think it bothered him every single day? But in my class, one of my pet peeves at Georgia Christian School, in my class, one of my pet peeves is when kids leave their trash behind. Miss Karen, did that bother you when you was teaching? It drives me absolutely nuts. I can't, for whatever, everybody's got it, that's mine. And so I told the kids, I said, listen, first day we go through the rules, whatever. Here it is, guys. Don't leave your stuff behind. You bring it in, take it out. There's a trash can right there. Literally all you got to do is pick this up and walk it over and put it in the trash can. And then the other day, 2 people left their water bottles on the floor. I already figured out I knew who it was. Because some of these people are the same suspects every single time. It's amazing how those habits just keep going, And I just told the group, I said, listen, if I see another water bottle on my floor, then nobody brings water bottles in. So I'm trying to get them to police themselves. And there ain't no honor amongst thieves, y'all. Once they get the idea, I can't have a water bottle. No, that's Jim. That's his water bottle every single day. But then I got the thing that just Troy was just talking about. Why are you punishing us for something they did? If I'm Caleb, man, God, I had the faith, right? I said, let's go take it. I know we can take it. And yet here I am, 40 years. I'm having to go through all of this. I'm having to watch all this. I'm having to live all of this. And I'm sure Joshua, y'all, had the same feelings, y'all. Because if I'm one of them, that's the way I'm going to feel. I'm sorry. I can't believe the fact that, and it's not like Joshua and Caleb didn't go out of their way to try to convince them, right? Because they wanted to do what? They wanted to stone them, right? Because they were so adamant, we can go into this land and take it, right? Because in my mind, Caleb and Joshua already knew, if we don't go do this, y'all, I know our God, and I know what happens when we, there's something coming, calm down, something's coming. It's kind of like the kid that gets upset and lashes out and wants to get loud with his parents, There's a line, and once you cross that line, okay, now there's a punishment coming. How the severity depends on how long you want to keep going. And so when I look at this and I see Caleb, I see a guy, y'all, that, man, he was still in it. He still wanted to be a part of it. He wasn't going to sit back and let this pass by again, right? He's in on it. And he's going to be one of the guys leading the charge. When they go to battle, he's going to be that guy in the middle of the fight. No matter how old he is, he's ready for this. And that type of desire and that type of what's the word I'm looking for? Determination if we would apply a shred of that into our Christian lives, man, we could become a people that could do so many things for our God. And really, when we look at the church today, there's two different camps. There's the Calebs and the Joshuas, and there's others, and that should not be what it is. We should all be a Joshua, and we should all be a Caleb, and have that love for God, that appreciation for God, and that drive for God. All right. So with that, in chapter 35, we get to the cities for the Levites. And the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, saying, command the children of Israel that they give the Levites cities to dwell in from the inheritance of their possession, and you shall also give the Levites common land around the cities. They shall have the cities to dwell in, and their common land shall be for their cattle, for their herds, and for all their animals. The common land of the cities which you will give the Levites shall extend from the wall of the city outward 1,000 cubits all around, and you shall measure outside the city on the east side 2,000 cubits, on the south side 2,000 cubits, on the west 2,000, and on the north 2,000 cubits. The city shall be in the middle. This shall belong to them as common land for the cities. Now among the cities which you will give to the Levites, you shall appoint 6 cities of refuge to which a manslayer may flee. And to these you shall add 42 cities. So all the cities that you will give to the Levites shall be 48. These shall you will give with their common land, and the cities which you will give shall be from the possession of the children of Israel. From the larger tribe you shall give many, and from the smaller you shall give few. Each shall give some of its cities to the Levites in proportion to the inheritance that each receives. All right, so we see here that the Levites are going to be given cities, and they were given cities because they were not given what? Well, the inheritance of land that the rest are going to get, right? They had a very specific task, and the Lord was going to be their inheritance, correct? And so here he is taking care of them, so to speak. No block of land was assigned to the Levites. However, the Lord dispersed the Levites among the tribes, giving them cities among all the tribes. The Levites were given 48 cities, plus the pastures around them for their cattle. The land around each of the 48 cities was designed as a belonging to the Levites. Now, why do you think God wanted the Levites to have cities in all of these areas? 48 total cities, correct? And every tribe's got to give up some land, right? For these cities, right? They've got to give them somewhere. Now he speaks about in Scripture they're in proportion. So in other words, the tribes that had more land would give up more cities than the ones that were smaller. It was based off proportion. Now that is done for fairness, correct? That's done for fairness, okay? And stop the squabbling, okay? Because you know it was coming, all right? But why do you think that God wanted the Levites to have cities in all of these tribes? Yeah, absolutely. You want your teachers of the law, right, to be everywhere. Because if they're not there and they're not present, how easy is it to fall away and forget who you are and whose you are, right? I mean, if you're not there and you don't have a constant reminder and have access, if you will, to these teachers of the law, if there's no presence there, then you just become whatever's around you, right? Because you got to remember, y'all, they're supposed to drive out all of these inhabitants, right? But that border stops somewhere, right? And there's people on the other side of that border that's not going to have the same beliefs as them. And over time, what are you going to start seeing? Even if they would have listened to God and drove all these people out, you're still going to have interaction, right? You're still going to have somebody on the border, and maybe they're even friendly, and you're going to have discussions and conversations. Well, you know, the whole thought is I'm not supposed to marry into this group on the outside, right? Because it's going to pull me away from God. But if you don't have that reminder of who I am, I lose my identity. And when I lose my identity as God, as God's child, then I'm open to anything, right? And so by them having a presence in all of these areas, whether it was more or less, they would be the constant reminder. They would be the constant reminder of God and what He wanted and what He expected. And so that's why. That's why He does this. Now, there is something interesting here. There's the selection and the appointment of cities of refuge. Okay? Those cities of refuge are very, very important. The Lord designated that 6 cities of refuge to be set aside among the people. The cities were a place of safety for those who accidentally killed someone. They were no protection. They were no protection for the guilty. 3 cities were appointed on each side of the Jordan so that they might be accessible to the people. The discussion regarding the cities of refuge gives us a glimpse at the administration of justice at that period in Israel's history. If a person was killed, an avenger of blood was responsible for punishing the killer. The avenger of blood usually was a blood relative. Because exacting justice could degenerate into mere revenge, which may not be fairly rendered, the Lord regulated the common practice by the appointment of the cities of refuge. In that event, in the event that a person killed a man, he could flee to the nearest city of refuge. If he was caught before making it to the city of refuge, the avenger of blood could execute his revenge. However, if he made it into the city of refuge, the man was given a trial. If he was guilty, he would be put to death by the avenger of blood. Evidences that murder was committed included the use of a weapon, whether of stone, iron, or wood. If hatred or lying in wait was shown to have occurred, the man was condemned as guilty of murder. 2 witnesses were required for conviction. If he was found guilty, no one could protect the guilty from the death penalty. If the death was accidental, the man was not guilty. When the man was found innocent, he was allowed to dwell in the city of refuge and no doubt be joined there by his family. The avenger of blood could not kill the innocent man so long as he stayed in the city of refuge. If he was found outside the city of refuge, the avenger of blood could kill him. But when the high priest died, the man was allowed to return to the land of his possession, and the avenger of blood could not harm him. These regulations govern the administration of the death penalty on those guilty of murder. To allow the murderer to go unpunished caused the land to be polluted. So when we look at this this issue of murder, we see that a person, probably if it happened, if someone died, accidental or not, this gave the opportunity for the administration of justice, right? In our system, a person is innocent until what? Sometimes it's amazing that flops. Y'all notice that? But we're innocent until proven guilty. Here's the thing with this, okay? If something happened to that degree and someone dies, here's a place where you can get justice. Okay? Now, reading that and understanding that means that when it happened, you better be on your way, right? Because the avenger of that family, that blood, the avenger of blood, he's gonna be coming after you. Now it says here, they also call him the man. God, let me read this. God gave specific instructions concerning the 6 cities of refuge. They were intended to provide asylum for the manslayer. The manslayer who took refuge in one of these cities would be safe. The avenger of blood, in the Old Testament, the avenger of blood refers to a close male relative who had several duties, including buying property that had been sold by a poor family member, purchasing a family member from slavery, receiving money owed to a dead family member, and contracting levirate marriage. In this context, the avenger of blood, or the goel, function in all of these roles, but another role was the blood avenger that he would serve as. So the person that served in this role as the avenger of blood wasn't the only thing he had to do. He was a very important person to that group, and he performed all these duties, but one of them was this, okay? And it was his job. He had to do it. And y'all, back at this point in time, he would have been taken extremely seriously. So if something happens, he's going to find this person. It's just what it is. And if you are that person, whether you know you're innocent or you know you're guilty, you better be running, okay? I think about that cartoon, The Road Runner, right? That's probably what you was doing, okay? Because here's the thing, if he catches you before you get into that city, he can take revenge, full revenge right there. So you going. You might not even tell the wife and kids, but you gone. And once you got there, now we can find out, was this accidental or was this on purpose? Okay, for conviction, you notice it was said you had to have how many witnesses? 2. If you have at least 2 witnesses, y'all, does that make the case a little bit stronger? Yes, because one person can say anything, right? You got to have 2 people that can corroborate the same story, right? Now, if he is found innocent, it was an accident, then as long as he stays in the city and lives in the city, then he's fine. The guy can't touch him. If he goes outside of the city, you're fair game again until the high priest dies. Once the high priest dies, you can't touch him. So it sounds like to me there was a lot of people living in these cities that were not going to be going outside the city for anything. Yeah, in a day. Sanctuary cities today, absolutely. The funny thing, I just think about these cities and the population. Well, when did you get here? What brings you to our city? Well, there's a guy 6'4" sitting out there outside the gate. That's what brought me to this city. So these people, once this was resolved, and if the person was found innocent, right, they would then send for their family. And they would come stay in the city, and you're there. And how long? Well, till the high priest dies. And once he dies, walk right on by, old boy, And it's just what it is. Now, this seems to be a fair system of justice, or maybe y'all tell me, do y'all think this is a fair system of justice? What stands out to me is the thought that no matter what happens, someone has lost somebody. And regardless of what the explanation is, regardless of what's discovered, somebody's always going to be upset. And how easy is it to right after this happens to just go ahead and act on your own feelings, regardless. And then what's going to happen? Well, his family's now mad because he was innocent, and you didn't listen to the judgment, and you took your own action, so guess what we're fixing to do? And then guess what we're fixing to do? And then what are you going to have? Hatfields and McCoys, yes. Which History Channel did a good job with that show. Huh? Yes. Somebody's always going to be upset about it. I don't care if it's justified or if it's not justified. Somebody's always upset about it. At least this gave enough time to go by where it softens the blow, possibly. It takes a lot of that anger out of it. Matter of fact, if you think about it, if you were to take 72 hours every time we get really mad and you got time to think and cool off, would you make different decisions than you would if you just instantly react? How many times? I'm guilty of it. There's times where I've reacted and I'm like, man, 3 days later, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Because it caused other issues, right? That probably didn't need to happen. And so with that, to me, that's what stands out. By the time you get to that, by the time you get to the point that a high priest dies, and all slates are clean, so to speak. A lot of that's done. A lot of that's over with. It's a lot. You've had time, and even the most vitriol, or the ones that would have been the maddest about this, regardless of innocent or guilty, they've had time to cope and move on, so to speak. And have other things come into their life where it's not the only thing in their life. So that's what stands out. That's what stands out to me. Probably why this would have been the case. And old boy that's sitting outside the gate for 20 years, I was going to go see my family, right? And then finally we get to the regulating of the inheritance of daughters in chapter 36. Earlier, the daughters of Zelophehad had asked Moses to appoint a law by which the daughters of a man who had no son might receive their father's inheritance. In 27, 1 through 11, the Lord made provision for such circumstances by enacting a law. However, the law needed some modification to prevent the inheritance of one tribe being given to another. Without additional legislation, a daughter of one tribe might inherit land. When she married a man of another tribe, that inheritance would be transferred to the man from one tribe to another. Consequently, the chief fathers of the tribe of Manasseh approached Moses about the possibility of a tribe's inheritance becoming the property of another tribe. So in other words, if this was a situation where there were no male heirs, so to speak, and the only one left, she would receive, based off of 27, she would now receive what her father had. Now, if she got married, then that would go, that would be transferred to the husband, so to speak. Well, if she's from the tribe of Judah, and she marries a guy from the tribe of, Gad, then now Gad got some of Judah's land. Does that make sense? So now Judah's going to look and say, wait a minute, that's our land, And I know this sounds like are you serious? Are we really mad about that? Y'all, what are people mad about today? You know what I'm saying? I mean, people get, I've seen numerous, I know numerous people, y'all, have the closest relationships, and then somebody dies and a will is read. And it destroys the relationship. It shouldn't, should it? People get mad about all kinds of stuff, y'all. And so to them, this is a legit concern. And that's just one example. Imagine if you got hundreds of examples every single year, right? Of this going here, this going there. And so this was a real problem, and it could turn out into a big problem. And so the Lord placed regarding the previous legislation, he places something to that by requiring the daughter who might receive an inheritance to marry within her tribe to prevent the land from passing out. So in other words, now if that was the case where she gets the inheritance from her father, then she has to marry somebody from her tribe. And that fixes the issue. There's no problem here. And so that was the step taken forward from this point. So everybody's satisfied after this because it fixes the problem. If you're from Judah, you got to marry a guy from Judah. If you're from Gad, you got to marry a guy from Gad. And that fixes the issue. And we know that all these things fix all the issues, and there's never ever another problem, right? If only life was that easy, right? I'm sorry? It's called window shopping. You can look, but you can't touch. No, I'm joking. You just couldn't. I mean, this was the expectation moving forward, and so if you're in Judah, you got to find somebody from Judah. And you got to think, y'all, there's thousands and thousands of people here. It's not like, you got three choices and you're like, what's the worst of what's not the worst of the three, right? There's thousands of choices. That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Male-dominated societies was a prevalent thing, and it's not just within this culture. You look at a study of history; it was prevalent everywhere, and all. But thank y'all. We've finished the material now for Numbers. Next week, we're going to have a class on the overall lessons that we've taken from Numbers, and I'll give out Deuteronomy, and then the next week we'll start Deuteronomy. Our time is up. Thank y'all so much for all the conversation.